There are three live-action Wonder Women. This gal, that gal, and this woman here. This Diana has made her return 2.5 years in the making in the 2020 release Wonder Woman 1984. These two Dianas are the same woman narratively, but more on that later. I like this movie. I know this film is a bit on the polarizing side of things, but
it's what it is.
I liked Wonder Woman 84. I wasn't expecting to. I was even a little ready to dislike it, mostly because of outside behind the scenes factors I'll address a little later. However, I found this film surprisingly charming, not just because I enjoy looking at Ms. Gall, but because I found the themes interesting and the interplay between Steve and Diana very endearing. I like the fact that it's not slammed in your face that it's the 80s, or rather a pulp culture idea what the 80s is, which is kind of the thing some films do when they aren't sure how to indicate the feel, the atmosphere of a given era. Come to think of it, I don't recall Wonder Woman 2017 using much, if any, ragtime music from that period. I could be wrong, but the point is that there are different ways to show the era in which a story takes place that can be more subtle or less in your face. Diana not using a sword and shield to fight in this film doesn't bother me, mostly because she's known as a warrior who knows how to fight with different weapons and without a sword. She's been doing it for over 7 years in comics and cartoons, so Diana knows how to throw hands should the situation arise. I know some of Patty's rationale on the use of sword in the film has rubbed some people the wrong way, but again,
it's what it is.
For me, there's a sincerity about the way the film tells its story, which I believe really indicates that this story is very much Patty and Gal's film and vision. It really looks like all the actors want to be there and their performances reflect that, as opposed to being in the hands of less creative forces and unideal circumstances.
Kalel, no!
I mean, a director is supposed to protect their talent and present them in the best possible light, but the 2017 WB executive regime had very different priorities, which is a whole different kettle of fish. But back on the topic, 84 is a drama-adventure story, a turn from the action-adventure period piece of Wonder Woman 2017, but not so out of the realm of storytelling possibility for Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman by character design, is a character that can work in action scenes, stories, as well as quieter, intense, more dramatic story. I enjoy dramas, even if they don't have an avalanche of action scenes, but I can definitely see this genreship being a point of contention for viewers looking for a more violent, action-oriented, morose-style story. It can feel like going from Aliens to Alien in reverse. I'm not going to go over beat by beat what happens, but the basic story revolves around a magic stone that grants wishes to those who hold it and make a wish for it. However, upon the wish being made, the stone takes away something from the wisher. The greater the wish, the greater the cost to the wisher. Though through this story, the characters of Diana, Barbara, and Maxwell Lord, and the world at large are explored through their reactions to such a devilish opportunity. This narrative allows the story to explore the themes of truth and the perspectives to which it is observed, dealt with, and ran away from through the character reactions of Diana, Barbara, and Max. Loneliness, desperation, envy are themes that are also on display, but aren't gone into too deeply, but are still given some time. The parallels between characters begin to show as the supernatural effects of the stone start to become more clear to them, as well as a look at what they value on a deeper level. For Diana, it's an unexpected second chance to be with her first love. Barbara finally being socially accepted and not being alone anymore. For Maxwell, an opportunity to be actually successful. These events take a slow burn approach, letting us observe the characters as things start to move faster. As the story moves forward, the world begins to spiral more and more into absolute chaos, with the climax being Diana defeating Barbara, who at this point has whisked herself into a super-powered monstrosity, then outsmarting Maxwell Lord by hijacking the world broadcast feed that is fueling Lord with the power of endless wishes, by appealing to the world through the lasso of truth, which doesn't just make people tell the truth, but also makes them see the truth, which is actually an idea concept I would have liked to have seen explored more in the film, which also relates to some other thoughts I have on the film, but that's for later. With the lasso wrapped around Lord's leg, Diana is able to speak to the world through Lord's broadcast, pleading to them to see that the wishes they are being granted are actually taking away from them what they hold dearest, destroying the world around them, and will soon be the death of them. Through her message, through the lasso, Lord also sees the truth of his own situation that he has lost sight of. His hard, rough upbringing has resulted in him becoming the kind of man that has gone to such extreme, desperate lengths to not become a failure, a loser, that he can't see the trail of fire behind him that was going to consume him, turning into what he feared most and cost him what he cares for most, his son. Sounds like a lot better than the final battle of Wonder Woman is simply a war of words, doesn't it? Lord renounces his wish, followed by the rest of the world, then rushes to find his son Alistair, and the magic effects are undone throughout the globe. In the end, Diana is finally at a place where she can let go of the wish to bring Steve back from the dead, but hold on to the joy of his memory. Understand there's a difference between accepting the death of a loved one from long ago versus having that loved one come back from the dead in an unexpected, surprising way, then having to send them away. This would mess with anyone's head and conjure all kinds of powerful emotions. No one holds a monopoly on how we handle grief, how we hold the memories of those we hold dear. That's the simplest version of the story. There's more to it, but I ain't your mama or your daddy, so you can watch the film for yourself. Don't be lazy. Now, that soliloquy of syllables tells what I liked about the film. That said, there are some things that I can't not see either. I felt like the lighting needed stronger contrast. There were times, Diana's first flight comes to mind, when she didn't look well composited into a scene, perhaps because the shadows from the light source were too light, or the environment seemed less real and integrated because the light source wasn't very clear. This has a habit of taking away from the shape and contour of the figure or space, making it either hard to read or see clearly. There were also times in the camera work where the action was unclear, when Diana saved Barbara from the drunk hobo, there were 3 cuts, I think, that showed the information of Diana's action but weren't all that clear. So shot 1 shows the drunk flying away from an unseen force. Second shot shows Barbara's right shoulder being ushered away by Diana's right arm, and the third was him hitting the ground, I believe. Now, I understand that Di's appearance was supposed to play a surprise, but the action was murky and too quick, which happened a few times during the film. Some things seemed to just happen out of nowhere. There just seemed like missing information at times and redundancies at others. Barbara researching news files right before she sprints out the building doesn't seem to add anything more than a later scene when Diana calls Barbara while she's still researching to get info on where the stone comes from. The running scene itself is kind of whatever to me. I understand the idea and the subtextual meanings behind it, but it doesn't feel well integrated into Barbara's narrative arc. It played a bit contrived, which in all fairness, almost all things are contrived, but this was nearing like 90s drug ad overtness.
Sarah?
She won't answer you. Or she can't.
Why not?
This is the way it's been since she started smoking pot.
It's not that on the nose, but I think you get the idea. Which leads me to the next issue of contention, power scaling. I understand this isn't Dragon Ball, and the focus isn't so shallow as to focus solely on fighting and feats of strength, but the nature of Diana's abilities are still left too vague. This wouldn't be a problem if Di's powers had little to no narrative value, but they do, and in the live-action films, Diana is a divine weapon, a god or demigod molded by Hippolyta and brought to life by Zeus. However, what that means for her physical abilities is not really clarified. When does her super strength first kick in? Was it only when she became an adult? Is it triggered by stress or trauma? If Diana got her godlike powers before she was an adult, would she not be stronger than everyone on Themyscira by a country mile? The movies never indicated that the Amazons were superhumans, but rather humans placed in a time capsule. So at best, the Amazons would be at peak human physical strength relative to each of their own bodies. Also, how did she know she could use lightning bolts in the final fight with Ares, but not use it in the fight against Doomsday in Batman v Superman? It plays like Diana's pulling powers out of nowhere with no rhyme or reason. Now, some fans try to theorize that because Diana is the daughter of Zeus in this version, she could control lightning as well, which would make sense if integrated into a plot point regarding her powers, but it wasn't. It was ambiguous at best. However, we have an answer for that question now. Regarding the original ending of Wonder Woman 2017, Patty Jenkins told IGN, "The original end of the first film was also smaller, but the studio made me change it at the last minute. And so there has always been a bit of a bummer that that's the one thing people talk about because I agreed. And I told the studio we didn't have time to do it, but it was what it was. I ended up loving it, but that was not the original ending of the movie." Like Batman and Superman, making a Wonder Woman film is not easy. And WB's executive reign of terror from 2015 through 2017, the experience can be an absolute nightmare to navigate for even the most passionate of filmmakers. Look, I'm not bringing this up to nitpick or to tear it down because I really do enjoy the film, but to illuminate a narrative issue that will continue to grow if not addressed properly, as more stories involve the continued growth of Diana's powers. Who else wanted to learn about the invisibility ability Diana used on the jet plane she and Steve were in? Right? That was cool. A story thread of Diana exploring and understanding the limits of her abilities? That'd be cool too. And wouldn't take up too much space either. But again, that ability came out of nowhere and left just as quick. And we still don't know what that gauntlet bush is, or how it works, or anything. It's just the thing she does out of nowhere. As a viewer, that stuff stands out and it's hard to forget. Maybe Patty and Gal have a plan for this in the newly announced Wonder Woman 3? I don't know, time will tell, but it is a thing. So remember the three Dianas I mentioned earlier? I feel it's important to discuss the impact of Diana's character changes across the film she's been portrayed in and the impact it has on how she's received in a given story. So, you remember this?
100 years ago, I walked away from mankind. From a century of horrors. Man made a world where standing together is impossible.
We have not seen that Diana since BVS. She'll return in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but BVS is where she was last seen. And much has been made about what does walked away from mankind really mean besides the obvious. And honestly, only Zack and Chris Terrio know the real answer to that. But because of the fallout of Batman v Superman, we didn't get to see the rest of Diana's arc play out, where we get to learn more about why Diana stayed away, how Clark's example affected her and made her come back, that sometimes even the strongest of us need to be inspired at our lowest points, especially empaths like Diana. When the empathic nature is stripped from Diana, what you have then is a generic female warrior, like Conan with bosoms. That's part of what separates Diana from the rest of the Amazons, Diana's natural buoyancy of personality and heart. She wasn't going to stay aloof and somber like she was in BVS because she had found hope through Superman's selfless act. Something else to consider regarding where Diana is at mentally in BVS, think of a time that you felt so sick and tired and fed up with how people treated each other and yourself. A time when you felt like, why even keep bothering to try and make any kind of change at all when the world makes you feel like nothing matters? Not because you had bought into a inflated sense of self-importance, but because you actually cared and had a love for humanity. What do you think that does to a person long term? Now imagine that person is 5,100 years old. We were, and now, and the Snyder Cut are going to see her find herself again, the warrior of love that she is. Yes, that's right, love. Deal with it. It's part of her character lore. After BVS, this happened on the Justice League promo tour 2017.
None of us knew exactly what's the backstory of Wonder Woman. And once they decided to shoot the solo movie for Wonder Woman, and we started to dig in and to understand the core of this character, we realized that actually there is no way that Wonder Woman will ever give up on mankind. The reasons why she left the island was because she wanted to make their life better and safer. That they are her calling. So I'm giving you a very honest answer. That it was sometimes, in a creative process, you establish something that is not necessarily the right decision, but then you can always correct it and change it. So Wonder Woman will always be there as far as she's concerned for mankind.
This was to account for the internal character shift in Wonder Woman 2017. A retcon, if you will. A retcon that, to the best of my so-called knowledge, has only been stated by Patty and Gal and not Zack. Maybe he and Chris Terrio feel the same way, I don't know. Patty and Gal had a vision for Diana as they developed Wonder Woman 2017, which shows in that film and in Wonder Woman 84. Their version of Wonder Woman in both films is narratively congruent, regardless of the genre shift, but not necessarily congruent with the Diana in BVS and potentially in the Snyder Cut. I say that not as a negative connotation, but as a narrative observation of where the film set in a big story map. There is some overlap with Zack's universe, but until it's made clear that walked away is code for Diana in incognito mode, these are two different versions of the same woman and this woman. And that's the thing with characters like Wonder Woman. Their lore is so large, but not every variation of the character can make into a live action film. Film takes a long time to make, and not everyone's going to get to see their favorite version in live action. Right or wrong, if you're super hardcore into Diana stoic in battle, then Wonder Woman 2017 may have what you're looking for. But if you want to see the more diplomatic, intimate side of Diana, then before Wonder Woman 1984, you were out of luck. So does one group of fans get preferential treatment because they are more vocal about a version of the character they like? But then that's how we got Justice League, a section of Access Media and a bunch of disgruntled fans who didn't like Zack's work made so much noise that scared WB into stopping Zack's vision cold. That is, until AT&T changed things. So when it comes to the fans, the scarcity of the possibility of seeing what they've imagined in their heads of these characters for so long come to life before their eyes in a live action film can bring out the best and worst in people. It's like brand loyalty on steroids. And then there's the elephant, or maybe snake, in the room, Jeff Johns, the other creative influence on Wonder Woman 84. I don't know John's writing. I haven't read anything he's written or been a part of, so it'd be difficult for me to tell what's his narrative hand in a given story. But this is more about how Johns is reported to conduct himself when he is involved in the DC films. It's well documented Ray Fisher's accusations of unprofessionalism and the treatment of the Justice League cast as a whole, as well as the Justice League crew liking posts linking to articles about the removal of Johns from power. Then there's the turbulence of John's time as DC Entertainment president. Things like Rick Famuyima's exit from The Flash because of creative differences. Ben Affleck's The Batman coming to a grinding halt as the project was into pre-production, ending with Ben leaving the production saying he couldn't get the script right. And then there's the troubles of Justice League and Suicide Squad. The sneak diss statements towards Zack in the trades about telling people how Superman is allowed to be portrayed in film because of his belief that his time in comics makes him the sole authority on how to portray these characters best on film. He was also involved in Aquaman's production, and as far as I understand, Wonder Woman 84 is his last DC film project credit. Why I bring this up is because even from an outsider perspective, the man and the out-of-touch WB execs with bad product knowledge and suspect business sense who promoted him has left a trail of fire behind him that derailed the unified sandbox universe Zack was putting together with David Ayer, Rick Famuyiwa, Patty Jenkins, and James Wan, where they could create their stories true that can stand on their own, but those stories would be narratively consistent within the universe Zack was building, as opposed to the fractured, narratively dissonant set of films post-Justice League, disjointed like Elaine dancing. That dark cloud follows a lot of John involved projects for DC films, So for a great deal of fans, any DC films with John's name on it has an asterisk next to it because philosophically it's hard to support something involving a guy that helped bring down so many other projects, which creates a schism of thought where some fans feel like one is morally or philosophically obligated to consume a story or film simply because it's a DC film, that one is not allowed to voice, no matter how civil, their disinterest or misgivings, or to have that discussion regarding a project. That to support creative freedom and integrity means mandatory support, compliant enjoyment, or be silent. That is toxic positivity. You can support creative freedom and not necessarily enjoy an artist's work. You can advocate for a director's vision and not feel compelled to support their work monetarily. We can enjoy things and still discuss the pros and cons from a different perspectives without beating at each other's throats. An overused statement said is that no film is perfect. But there's another side to that. No audience is perfect. Unless you have a YouTube channel.
Got him!
People are nuanced and the nature of intent can be nebulous, and in our desire to help creatives tell their tale in peace, in our wish that we see those stories, let's not lose something valuable to ourselves in the process. Enjoy the films that you do sincerely, but let's not lose the discussion that leads to us understanding in a greater context how we all experience those stories and the truths that we find in ourselves and reveals in each other. I think we all realize that American film studios still see comic book properties as made for kids stuff instead of the all ages diverse genre that it truly is. They think the popularity of the characters gives them a pass to frequently tell the same kinds of overly simple stories, which then breeds a negative fan reaction where any kind of violence, no matter how graphic, is seemingly welcomed because it's seen as some kind of reprieve from one kind of story style dominating a story landscape, which then competes with other fans who are into very light, less dramatic kind of storytelling. These fans shouldn't be fighting each other. We should not be enemies. There should be room for different kinds of stories with these kinds of characters like Wonder Woman. Variety is important for all stories. It's the extremes that cause the most trouble. Extreme unnecessary comedy and adventure stories, extreme unnecessary violence and action stories with no room for the subtlety that human stories require in order to truly thrive. I guess the long and short of it is, I like Wonder Woman 1984. It has heart even when it stumbles. That's okay. If you don't like Wonder Woman 1984, that's okay too. You're not a bad person for it. Unless you're punching grandmas. Then I can't rock with you, homie. That's the truth. And the truth is all there is.
Kalel, no!